What's up, guys? Welcome to episode 4 of Cardboard from Mars. I'm Nima, this is Nate, and with us is special guest Greg.
Hey everyone. Today we're going to continue our discussion of strategy archetypes. We're going to talk about animal strategy, event strategy, heat, and earth strategies.
Hope you enjoy, guys. Okay, so for the first topic today, we're going to talk about animals. When we talk about animal cards, we're talking about any sort of card that will add animal resources to the card, right? So what kind of cards are those, Greg?
So they come in a couple flavors. You have very common cards such as fish, birds, livestock, and small animals are examples. By adding an animal token onto that card, it enables you to get a point. Oftentimes these cards you have a 1-for-1 or a 1-for-2 exchange.
Yeah, and that's much better than microbes, which is kind of a corollary strategy, but often with microbes, they require 3 or 4 microbes to score a point. And because the way you score points with microbes is you raise a TR parameter, basically you have to take a turn off to do that. So animals do have some inherent advantages over microbes.
Right, so, and it should be said that animals are a late game strategy. They're also a support strategy. This is not something you want to invest a lot of time and money into. It's going to get you anywhere 5, 10, 15 points maybe at the end of the game. And what are the kind of the key cards, and when would you want to play them?
Yeah, so some of the key cards, I mean, Greg mentioned some of them already. Often the best animal cards, the ones with a 1-to-1 point ratio, have terraforming parameter restrictions that only allow you to play them in the end game.
Right.
But where that can be, where they can be really good, is if one of the terraforming parameters goes up really fast in comparison to the other two.
Yep.
Then you can get that animal card early, and you can get a lot of points out of it.
I think. Oh, I was going to say one of the ones that seems to be a very common trend seems to be oxygen, with small animals being at around 6% oxygen need versus all the other ones. I think fish is the only one that has temperature requirements. So it seems that if you want to play an animal strategy, you want to push for an oxygen strategy up front.
Right. So, with a corollary to that, if you see that both the oxygen and temperature are really high, you know the game's going to end really soon, right? Mm-hmm. So it's less good, I'll say, to play out animal cards when it's that late in the game. However, if it's really high oxygen, low temperature, that is optimal time to play animal cards because you know you've got a lot of time to play them, get resources on them.
Yeah, there's also some key cards that allow you to generate a lot of animals all at once.
Right.
Probably the best in that category is Large Convoy, which produces 4 animals potentially. It also has 2 points on the card and creates an ocean tile. So that card by itself can be worth 7 points if you put all 4 of those animal cards on one of the 1-to-1 point scoring ratios.
Yeah.
And that actually changes up your play pattern a little bit because you can actually consider that to be a late game play. Right, like even if the game's about to end and you have fish in hand, and even if the game is close to ending, you can play fish and then play Large Convoy and get a bunch of points out of it.
You do lose out a little bit on Large Convoy with, late game. You're probably not going to be able to put the ocean down, for example.
That's true.
But that's still very good, I would agree.
Yeah, I think kind of like one of the early game strategy cards that we haven't mentioned yet is pets, and I think that's something where again it's for every 2 animals you can get a point, and this is based off of the number of cities that are in play. And so there are some corporations and factions that are ideally suited for this, but this is one of those cards that you have to play earlier on, really to really maximize out your points.
Totally. This is an early game card, like you just said. If you see someone playing Tharsis, for example, Tharsis Republic, that's a pretty good telegraph to play pets, right?
Yeah, that's a great point. And pets is almost like an animal strategy in one card. Usually it can generate between 5 and 7 points.
Yeah.
If you play it early enough.
Yeah.
That gets you halfway to your impact with that strategy.
Yeah. So what are some counter strategies against people who play who do play animal strategy?
Yeah. Well, there's a few key cards. So most notably predators. So predators can just be absolutely devastating. By being able to steal other people's animals. And there's like a little mini game that's created sometimes when somebody plays predators, because you have to decide whether or not you're going to keep producing animals yourself or whether to just shut that card down.
I mean, essentially, Predator shuts down an animal strategy, right?
Yeah.
Like it's every single animal you put on there gets taken off, so it's almost like why bother at that point.
Well, like say you have a few points on your animal cards already,
Right.
so then you are protecting those points
That's
by
true.
creating them and allowing them to take them. So then it becomes, am I winning? Do
Or
I
just
care if this
trading,
person gets a
yeah.
few more points and I would rather keep the points that I have on this card to beat the winner? Or if several people have cards that are generating animals, then you have to play that sort of game of, well, are they going to take animals evenly or
No, that's true. If you already have points on there, then and there's no reason to not use it, right? You just maintain the animals
Right.
that you have on there. So yeah, I agree with that. The other one's virus, right? Virus is just a quick hit to someone's animal
Right.
count, and it's just nasty.
It is.
Right.
A little
It's
bit.
just how it's pretty valuable when you think about it. If you're able to use it, it's just really cheap, and it deprives someone of how many points is it? Like
It's two animals.
Two animals. So
Yeah.
it could be 1 or 2 points. It's like okay.
And typically the way you get virus is that you rarely buy that card, but if you
Yeah.
have a card drawing engine, you just get
You
it,
just
and
get
then
it,
it's
yeah.
just like almost free to
Right.
minus 2 points to somebody.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think one card that actually is nice to protect against predators would be the protected habitat.
Yeah.
Right. Because that's the one that's actually good if you're playing whether you're playing a plant strategy or an animal strategy, and it's a way at least it's covering you.
Yeah.
And it's cheap. It's five costs.
It's true. I would call that a nice to have with animal strategy. I think it's
Yeah.
more crucial with plants.
Plants. Yeah.
But yeah, if it's something you can easily get out, do it. But I wouldn't call that crucial.
Yeah. But I think another inherent strategy that's nice with some of the animals, maybe even in the late game. A lot of people at the end are trying to build up a plant strategy,
Yeah.
and with these cards, they actually inherently take away plant production from your opponents.
That's
so
true.
it could be, and like you might be able to score 1 or 2 points off of your animals, but you're also hopefully slowing your opponent down as well.
Yeah, right. When
Yeah.
everybody's doing that calculation at the end, where they're,
Yeah.
I need to have exactly the
Yeah.
number of plants to get my, plant conversion.
Yeah,
at
I
the
mean,
end.
yeah, right. Birds, for example, can be totally devastating. to
Devastating.
someone
Yes.
Late in the game. So yeah, that's a good point.
Do you guys think animals is good? We all agree that microbes is pretty bad.
Not good.
Yeah,
Yes.
I would say animals is good. You again, since it's a support strategy, you're not gonna be able to go that far with it. But yeah, I think it's worth it. You can easily get
5
to 10 points
yeah,
out of it
easily.
without too much trouble.
Would you take key animal cards like fish or birds in your opening 10? Would you buy those out of your opening 10 cards?
I personally wouldn't,
Yeah.
because that's some money early on and space in your hand that it's just gonna sit there the entire game.
Yeah. Exactly.
So I wouldn't.
I
I
would
agree.
consider pets possibly. I'm like that would be
Well,
one
yeah,
of the
pets,
few things.
yeah.
That would be one of the few cards I would actually consider taking.
Yeah, totally. Pets is the one. What about you?
The only exception is like if I'm playing Helion and I have Soletta in my opening hand or something like that, I might take something like fish, right? Like if you know that you're going to be the person to push a parameter really fast, then you can kind of take that knowing that you're going to do it. But I agree with you guys. In general, I pass on those cards in the opening 10.
Right. But do you think it's good?
I think it's good. Yeah, I mean, I think it's good as a support strategy, as you said. I mean, pets by itself could be 5 to 7 points for 10 credits. I mean, that's as good as a milestone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And you do almost nothing for it, right?
Right.
It just sits there and passively gets you points.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a good point.
All right. Well, good luck trying to corral those animals.
Yeah.
Okay, the next archetype we're going to talk about is the event archetype. And I want to be clear about definitions here. Basically, I'm not talking about the card class events, but actually using event cards as a specific strategy in and of itself. And this is something that's sort of become more clear to me as I played the game more. But you can chain together event cards one generation after the next as a specific strategy in and of itself, and it can be extremely powerful.
Right. So not all the event cards sort of do different things. A lot of them raise TR in one way or another. But yeah, so how do you chain these together, and like what kinds of things are you looking for?
So I think there's some good key enabler cards that that can help with building the strategy. Things such as optimal arrow braking, media group, and interplanetary cinematics. And I think the two ones to focus on a lot, the media group and interplanetary cinematics, is they can both cheapen your cards, as well as provide other benefits.
Yeah.
Yeah, it should be noted, Interplanetary Cinematics is a corporation, but if you have that as one of your opening options, then you can consider this strategy. The reason that this is deceptively good is that many of the event cards raise TR parameters directly. So if you spend, 36 credits on Giant Ice Asteroid, you actually get 4 TR boosts immediately. This is in contradistinction to some other strategies where you spend the early game building up an engine, which then you reap the benefits from later on in the game. But with the event strategy, you just bypass the building the infrastructure component. You just go right to the TR.
Right, and TR equals money.
And that equals money. So that's why it's so powerful, is that you're building your economy at the same time that you're just playing these cards out. So if you play Giant Ice Asteroid on turn 1, which is, I think, one of the most powerful things that you can do in the game, and the game goes 10 generations, you generated 40 credits off of that. It paid for itself, and you got 4 TR parameters out of it.
Yeah.
Right, so like, how would you guys go about getting into this? Like, what are you looking for? What strategies do you want to get into if you're going to do events?
Yeah, I think part of it really does draw in part from your opening hand. Again, we mentioned interplanetary cinematics is a good one to try and pair with this type of strategy, and I think the other ones, probably combining space and titanium, are actually another excellent source, because some of these very powerful asteroid cards do require titanium, and they do cost a bit. So I think having some of those cards opening off or in your early hand definitely helps play towards that. But I think in and of themselves, by themselves, as a one-of card, as Nate pointed out, they're very powerful. Like, they provide TR points, they help with raising all your terraforming ratings, and also if you see that there's an intense ground game going, they really can help with slowing that game down.
With all the incidental plant disruption.
Yes.
Right, the asteroids, obviously in particular, are really good for messing up ground game.
Yeah, I sort of see yourself getting into the strategy in two ways. As Greg mentioned, if you have the right types of cards in your opening hand, then basically you just decide, I'm not going to build an engine in this game. Every turn, I'm just going to try and take event cards and just chain them together. And so that's one way you can do that. And that could be if you have interplanetary cinematics, but more importantly, if you have like media group or optimal arrow braking or something like that. A second way that you can get into it is if you've built up a space titanium engine and you're sort of in the mid game, and the Jupiter strat just has not panned out. You're not getting those cards, or they've been cut, and you notice that the event cards are going around the table. That's where you can just basically take those cards and just start using your titanium to chain events.
Right, so along with the space titanium strategy is just the general economy strategy, which we talked about last time. Since these cards are so expensive, those are the two ways you want to pay for them, right? Titanium makes them cheaper, and then if you're just generating a lot of money on your own, that's another way to go about this.
Yeah. One other advantage of the event cards is that you can get TR bonuses a lot easier with event cards, because you can raise the heat. With Demos down, you can raise the heat 3 steps or something. That can come out of nowhere and grab you the ocean placement bonus or something like that. Yeah. So they can be very powerful in the mid to late game for that reason as well.
Right.
Yeah. Do you guys see any pitfalls with this type of strategy?
Yeah, I mean, like this, the biggest pitfall of the strategy, I think, is not pulling the cards, right? This more than some of the other strategies, and Nate, you were making this point, you need to be able to play into these cards. You're not necessarily going to get a lot of them. So that's when you're playing, I assume in the draft, you really want to look out for these cards, right?
Yeah. That, or probably combining this with some kind of card drawing engine.
Yeah,
so
card drawing.
Probably some kind of science strategy as well might actually help you with at least pulling all the cards you need.
What I find with this one is that often early in the game, some of these event cards will come around and you choose not to take them because they're too expensive and you want to build your engine. So if you're starting to think about going into this specific strategy, you are giving up your engine building, and you'll start taking these cards early and just holding them in hand until you actually can play them. And that is also the pitfall, which is that
Exactly.
if you have tried that strategy and it doesn't work for whatever reason, then you don't have an engine to fall back on.
That's
So if
right.
the game does end up going long, you can sort of just peter out with this strategy. You have a really good start, but you just don't quite get
finish.
there.
You don't finish strong.
Right. So on that note, do you guys think this is a good strategy?
I think probably we've had a lot of debates about this. Is it better in a 2 to 3 person game? Is it better in a 5-person game? I think it depends possibly on the people who you're playing against. I think very shrewd players, once they get their opening hands, and they will actually like fix down at least initially on that strategy, and they might, like you said, forego this, and so another player willing to take that gamble, that risk, which we've seen you do quite a bit, will scoop up a lot of these cards. So I think it is probably dependable. What do you think?
I think it's really good. I mean, I think that if you think about the pacing of the game, there's strategies that you want to end the game very quickly, and I think of ground game as being one such strategy. And then there's really late game strategies where you're just trying to build up a huge engine and have the game go as long as possible so you can absorb a lot of points at the end. I feel like this is sort of mid-range. It's sort of between the two. You want the game to go a little bit longer than you would with ground game, but you want to end the game before you get beaten by the late game strategies. And really key is sort of reading the table in the early game and trying to figure out what other people are doing. If both of your opponents are playing a late game strategy, you're probably going to come up short. But if somebody's playing a ground game and they're going to help you do the TR parameters a little bit, this can be a devastating strategy.
Right.
True.
Yeah. I personally, I think this is sort of a mid to upper tier strategy. I think if you can get into this and it works out for you, it's really good. But it's just really high risk.
Yeah.
These are very expensive cards, and if you can't get a way to play them cheaply and efficiently, you're going to be doing these like one a turn, and you're just not going to get it. It's not going to work out.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So I'm sensing from both you guys, you probably agree this is probably more of a strong support strategy.
I wouldn't call it a support strategy.
No?
I think it would, if you're going to do this, it's going to be your main strategy, but it's just risky.
I agree with that, and that's also part of the reason that this is really, I think, benefits from a draft strategy, because in the standard game without draft, you just won't pull these cards enough that you can chain them together. But in a draft, I think you actually have a pretty good chance of doing that if it's open.
Yeah.
Right.
So then again, what do you guys think? 2 to 3 person game versus a 4 to 5 game?
I think
Where
it's
do you think
best.
this one
I think it's
shines?
best
Where
in
do
a
you think this
3-person game because these cards are good enough on their own that in a 4-player game, they're just not going to come around the table to you. Whereas in a 3-person game, if one of the people is, doing ground game, you're going to get past a lot of these cards.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
Good luck with the event strategy.
okay, so the next strategy archetype is heat. Generally, when we talk about the heat archetype, we're talking about any sort of cards that will generate heat resources for you that you can use to raise the temperature. So, why is this a good archetype to talk about?
Well, part of the reason that heat is a good strategy is that there's 19 steps on the temperature tracker.
Yeah.
That's more than any other of the terraforming options.
Right.
And there's also some key cards that will massively boost your heat. So cards like Mohole Area or Soletta that will just massively boost your heat production in the early game. There's no corollary to that like for oxygen, for example. There's nothing that gives you, 7
Right.
plant production in 1 turn or something like that. So for that reason, heat sort of exists as its own archetype.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason for that is plants are used for greenery, right? And greenery has its own set of victory points associated with it, with ground game, and yeah. So
That's
I
right. So
think
it's
that's
like
the
you're getting
balance there.
double points or even
That's
triple
right.
if you have a city, whereas with the heat you get the 1.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, what are some good cards to play with the heat strategy?
Yeah, no. So kind of you already mentioned two very good ones. Soletta, which produces 7 heat by itself. mole area, which enables you to put something, put a marker down onto the board, which you can get resource from that, but it also generates 4 heat. I think some other cards that we haven't mentioned yet, Beam from a Thorium Asteroid, which is another one, produces 3 heat, 3 energy, which energy by itself, which we haven't talked about yet, actually pairs very well also with the heat strategy, because any unused energy at the end of a round gets converted to heat. So anything that can generate a large quantity of energy will also help in this heat strategy.
Right, so that's a good segue. So what are the things that go well with heat? And the main one is absolutely energy. Just for all the reasons you said, but what else goes with heat, would you say?
Well, I think it's worth noting, energy is clearly very good with the heat strategy, but it's better if you do other things with your energy if you can. So for example, like if you have physics complex or a water splitting plant or something like that, or there's several types of cards that let you spend an energy to draw a card, things like that. I mean, I think of energy going into heat as sort of the backup plan, but it's still good because it's just incidentally it's good with heat.
Yeah. But I think one of the other things that once you get a large heat engine going towards the end game, cards like such as Insulation or Caretaker Contract are ways of generating points for you.
Yeah, exactly. What Greg's talking about is if you're playing heavy heat, when you get to the end game, and all of a sudden the temperature track's done, your heat is now worthless, you have a problem. You need some way to turn that heat into something else you can use, and that's where those cards Greg just talked about come in handy. It's really important with heat, because if you invest all of your time and energy into heat production, and you don't have anything to do at the end of the game, you're probably going to lose.
Yeah,
true.
That's part of why Helion is so good, because once you're done, doing the temperature raising, you can just turn all of that heat generation into cash.
Yeah.
And it does raise an interesting question when you're playing Helion. In the early to mid game, do you guys favor using the heat for cash, or do you sort of always reserve the heat for temperature boosts?
Yeah, I think when I've played, I prefer actually keeping it for temperature boosts, only because of the fact that your end goal is to get as many points as possible, and yeah, you may have to actually curtail some of your strategy initially early on, in terms of what you can buy. But I think getting those points and denying them from your opponent is still far better.
I think generally I prefer the heat production, because heat production is TR, right? Which TR equals money.
Yeah.
So I think if you can boost your TR up with it quickly, that's good. But I do think Helion's ability is very good for tight situations where you're short just a little bit.
Yeah.
And in that case, it's really good to just add a little bit of heat to it and get that extra boost.
I totally agree with you. That's exactly how I play it too, is that I usually reserve the first 8 heat in any generation for the TR booster, but let's say you have your heat production up to like 12 a turn or something. I do view that extra 4 heat for that generation as emergency cash.
Funds. That's true.
I mean, it's nice if you can save it, because it will ultimately get turned into a TR boost, but I play it the exact same way you do.
Right. So would you guys say this is a good strategy?
I think it's a great strategy. Not to mention it also builds in within the own TR tracker, which we haven't mentioned. You have 2 additional ways that on the TR tracker further increasing your heat, as well as potential putting down an ocean. So those are, again, if you're driving very hard in this area, you can up to a maximum of 20 points. So I think it's a great strategy.
I think it's good too, although what typically happens is that there is a very specific way to counter this strategy. So if you build a heat engine, the other players are going to prioritize finishing the heat tracker early. So they'll use asteroids or other types of cards to raise the heat and basically cannibalize points that you were trying to get out of your heat engine. And so you can invest a lot of resources into heat production and then just find out at the end that like you didn't actually score that many points. And that's why it's so key to have a safety valve at the end, a way to use the extra heat to do something. And it could just be as simple as getting the Thermalist award, but it's better to have more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very true. The Thermalist award is, you better fund that one, right?
Yeah, sure.
As early as possible, yes.
Cool.
All right, well, good luck raising the heat.
Raise the heat on it.
The last thing we're going to talk about today is the Earth archetype. Basically, this isn't a really well fleshed out strategy like some of the other ones that we've talked about. But there are 20 cards in the deck that have Earth tags on them, so there is a clear commonality here, some archetype.
Yeah, we thought it was worth a mention. It's not necessarily a major strategy, but
Yeah.
it's a support strategy, and there are some cool combos to get out of it, like you said.
Yeah, I think two of the cards that we want to mention that they get a special mention is Terractor, which is a corporation. They have the ability to decrease the cost of an Earth archetype card, as well as Earth Office. Similarly, you can also decrease it by a cost of 3. With this, you're better able to chain and better and more cheaply cast some of these other Earth archetype cards.
Yeah, and if you have those 2 cards in your opening hand, it is a powerful discount, getting 6 credits off of the Earth cards. The thing is though, with only 20 Earth tags in the deck, there's something like 230 cards or something like that. You're talking about 10% of the cards are Earth cards. It's pretty hard to get them. So that's why it's really hard to get huge value out of this sort of thing. But it is worth noting that most of the Earth cards are pretty good.
And also they're pretty cheap. Like for that reason, there's not a lot of them. There's not necessarily a huge strategy, so they're not that expensive, which is a nice thing.
Yeah, and I think some of the synergy, or at least some of the things that I've enjoyed playing from the Earth strategy. Things like the Earth Catapult, which cheapens in general all your cards by 2, or things like the Immigration Shuttle. It not only bumps your economy by 5, but it also as a mid-late game strategy, it also has the ability to actually chain off of people who are playing very heavy ground game strategies.
Yeah,
with
for sure.
cities.
There's some good cards to be had with Earth tag cards.
Yeah, I think the thing that really limits the Earth archetype is that there's no multiplier cards. So if you think about the Jupiter strategy, for example, like the reason that strategy is so good is that they have these multiplier cards that give you benefits for all those tags. I wish that they had put an Earth tag multiplier in the set, because
at least
I think
one,
at least one, because I think it would have really made it more interesting. I mean, I think of the Earth tags as being like those cards are incidentally good, but they don't really come into a coherent strategy.
Yeah, I only think maybe they didn't do that because they were saving that mechanism for Jovian tags. But
yeah, I think that like sometimes with the Jovian strategy, there's such a desire to hate draft those cards or to cut them from other players. It would have been interesting if they had a second multiplier concept in there, so that sometimes you would have both of those multiplier cards in the draft, and you can't hate them both. Sometimes you want to take the Earth tag, and so you're going to pass on the Jupiter tag. I think if they had 2 of the such archetypes, it might have allowed them to flourish a little bit more.
Yeah, hopefully in a future expansion, maybe they'll address this. It's also really unfortunate too, because Jupiter I think just gets so much love, because they even have in future board expansions, they even have a milestone victory condition.
right.
Like Earth doesn't even have this.
That's a
So
great
there's just
point.
there's a lot of hate against. But again, this is Terraforming Mars, not Rebuild Earth.
Yeah, that's a great point though, Greg. Like they could actually really enhance this strategy just by putting a milestone with Earth tags on it. That'd be very interesting.
Yeah, so good luck getting those Earth cards out there.
Yeah.
Alright, thanks for tuning in, guys. That's the last video on the strategy archetypes. Next time we're going to talk about the corporations. And check out our other YouTube videos. And we also started a Twitch stream recently. So it's in the same name, Cardboard from Mars. So check us out there if you're ever on Twitch. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
See ya.